Hi. If you're just joining us, I'm Jeremy Blake with the Manufacturers Alliance, and I'm here with Lucy Camarena, who is the Director of CI with Lexington Manufacturing, and Tyler Wheelfort, who is a manufacturing professional, especially in continuous improvement. And we've been talking about planning high impact Kaizen events. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your experience, your wins and maybe some of your non-wins throughout your presentations, and just carving time out of your day to share with the Manufacturers Alliance community.
You bet.
Thanks.
Happy to.
It was a pleasure to listen to those. What I'd like to do now is just really go a little bit deeper into some of the concepts, some of the tools you were talking about, and some of the things that you've experienced, and then help maybe close some of the gaps that some of our audience members might have around some of the challenges that they face with planning impactful Kaizen events. We ready to get into it?
We
All
are.
right.
All right. So Lucy, we'll start with you first. All right. So, we know what they all say about like all good plans, right? What ends up happening sometimes. And so what I'm curious is what tips do you have for when the actual planning phase, so not the Kaizen, but the actual planning phase doesn't go the way you're planning for it to go, the way that you hope?
Yes, and it happens more often than most people like to acknowledge. And it really depends. And I know most people hate that answer, but it depends. And I would say use your experience to decide what to do. If you look at the situation and you have enough data to keep going, then go for it. Have the Kaizen event. Know that you're going to struggle as a facilitator. You're probably going to have to do 150% to get the team going. But if you think you can get it through, do it, because rescheduling and get people back on the calendar is a pain in the butt. But also, if you don't think it's going to be a successful Kaizen, it's okay to say, no, stop. We are not ready. We're going to reschedule it and then do the proper planning. Otherwise, you're just wasting people's time.
I like that. How about Tyler? Do you have anything from your experience?
Yeah, that was very good, Lucy. Thank you for that. A little bit on what she was saying, trust your gut. If you know where it's going awry and it's something that you can solve yourself, great. If you need the team to help you, pull them in. If it's not going to be a successful event because of how far this is steered off course, maybe call it and reschedule for another time. But the maximizing, or back to her point, really making sure that you're not wasting people's time so you don't lose that momentum down the line in the event and the culture of Kaizen in the organization, that will be a bigger win than actually trying to force the event through.
Great. I think that's great insight, right? And I think it's also helpful for our members to understand that it does happen. It doesn't just happen to them.
Yes.
Right? It happens to experts that are dealing with this. And so I think it's valuable to know that it is okay to say time out, right? It is okay to bring the team back together and go all right, we've got some gaps here. So I think that alone is super valuable information for people. How about mini Kaizens? All right, so my time in industry, it was starting to kind of happen a little bit, mini Kaizens. So you go from the traditional 5-day big, we say 8 hours, but a lot of times 12-hour day Kaizens, right? Yeah. And then now we're doing more of some of these bursts, these 2 days, sometimes even 1 day Kaizens. So when it comes to mini Kaizens and them becoming more popular, does that make it more difficult to ensure that they're high impact? And if so, how does that affect your planning? And Tyler, we will start with you.
Sure. I actually think it's easier to plan a mini Kaizen. You have fewer stakeholders that are stirring or creating chaos in the process. Just out of when you look at your return on investment and the amount of time and the amount of resources you have to pull in for a very large Kaizen, again, if you're looking at 20 to 30 people, months of planning goes into that activity to make sure it's effective. If you're going to go after something small with a limited number of people, you're going to see that win. You're going to win the hearts and minds through that activity, I think, a lot faster, which will, again, propel the culture around Kaizen quicker than coming to the table with this very large activity. Planning it, just make sure you're very focused on that one thing you want to accomplish. If it gets to be If it starts to spread or the scope begins to spread because it is a problem that can't be solved by just doing it, that may not be the appropriate problem for a mini Kaizen. But that's kind of your gauge on whether or not uh, how effective your plan will be and whether you choose the mini or the full scale.
Okay. Okay. How about Lucy? Have you had some experience with mini Kaizens?
Yes, yes. We used to call it just do it.
Hmm.
Now we call it blitz.
Hmm.
Um, but I like the concept. I mean, just because traditional Kaizen events were 5 days, it doesn't mean we really have to have 5 days to get
Hmm.
things done. So I think it's appropriate to use blitz when your scope is narrow. And again, we go back to no wasting people's time. You don't need 5 days. Let's get it done in two. Or let's get it done in three. Um, but I would say the planning preparation is still the same. You still need to select the right Kaizen event. You need a proper charter. So it goes back to what you said, Taylor. If you're creating the charter and the scope you can manage it in the 2-3 days you wanted to schedule it, that means this is not a mini Kaizen. Um, and then you also need to prepare it the same way. Make sure you have the room booked, you have all the material. So the same tasks are needed no matter the size of the event or how many days you're going to go for it.
Okay. Is there any escalation in maybe like the type, like the data that you're getting, the information, maybe closing down even more of the unknowns prior to the Kaizen? Like a lot of times in Kaizen events, we can kind of close the gaps on some of those unknowns together.
Hmm.
Do you end up doing a little more upfront work to close some of those gaps, trim some of the fat, so to speak, before getting into the mini Kaizen? Has that been helpful for you?
Um, I'll go first if that's
Sure.
okay. Yes. So actually, the unknowns for me really is going to dictate if you can go with a blitz or a full blown Kaizen.
Okay.
If you're going to try to solve an issue that there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of what I call them the can of worms, planning a 2 day, it's very unrealistic.
Yeah.
So the more unknowns, the more these little red flags come up saying, hey, this is not a mini Kaizen. But a lot of the times you have processes that are very consistent, reliable, that you know what you need, you have the data, then just go for it and just get it done.
So kind of going back to the first question, it's like, again, it's okay to raise your hand and say, I know we're aiming for a mini Kaizen here, but as we're prepping, this is
Still
not.
doesn't seem
It's
like
like, again, you have a voice and it's okay to use that voice. That's kind of what I'm hearing, I think, from you guys
Yes.
as you talk about that. Again, sticking with sort of some Kaizen constraints that can sometimes come, right? And so when we're talking about having high impact Kaizen events, how do you balance that with a lot of companies? They do Kaizen quotas too. So you've got to hit X amount of Kaizens in a quarter, but we also need every one of them to be high impact. So, Lucy, I'd like to kind of pick your brain first a little bit on how you balance the high impact Kaizen events with Kaizen quotas.
Well, first of all, if there's a Kaizen quota metric somewhere, I will say the organization's missing the point of Kaizen events. Quality over quantity. I truly believe you need to have quality events. Otherwise, you're just damaging your lean culture. There is a time and place for events, and I love having Kaizen events. But actually, I prefer to spend most of our resources and our time on daily Kaizen and just leave the events when daily Kaizens are not appropriate to resolve a bigger issue. That only an event, dedicated team for a period of time can resolve it. So I'm not a fan of Kaizen quotas.
Not a
to be
fan of
honest.
Kaizen quotas. Cool. That validates how I felt at my time in industry too. So I'm glad that you said it instead of me. How about Tyler? How about for you? Have you had experience with Kaizen quotas, or maybe some colleagues?
I'll be honest, this is the first time I've heard Kaizen quotas.
Oh.
Organizations have their metrics they want to achieve. If quotas around Kaizen is one way that they set that's great. But back to what Lucy was saying, it's quality over quantity for me personally when I'm planning to lead Kaizen events or even engaging with leadership teams around the business to develop Kaizen. I want to take it back a step. You have to assess where you are in your Kaizen journey. Quotas could be linked to Just Do It and daily Kaizen. Or if the organization is being more strategic about how it's applying its continuous improvement culture, it might be tying those activities back to some of the strategic planning that happened at the senior level. So you have to assess where you're at. I wouldn't drive for an end result based on some out there metric, just because, again, that might dilute some of the value of the Kaizen. But again, yeah, quality over quantity. There's a couple things you have to consider, but I don't think we should be using quotas to set Kaizen activity in our organizations.
I'm gonna throw an audible here then to dig into this because I like what we're talking about here, right? So there are people in the audience watching right now who probably may work somewhere that has Kaizen quotas, right? Maybe they're even the person who decided to have them. And I know in my past, some of the companies I've worked at that had them, the main concern was that we want to continue to have Kaizens, right? We don't want to have, their feeling was if you remove the quota, they just won't happen. And so since, we're all on the same page here, we're like, we prefer not to have quotas. Do you have advice on how to just keep that Kaizen culture moving forward then so that a company doesn't feel like they need to rely on a quota? And so I'll just open either one of you who, if you've got.
I think Tyler already mentioned it. It's not, there should be a metric, but it shouldn't be just events.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the daily Kaizen, just continuous improvement. So if you want to measure the lean activity, measure in all the different ways you can do continuous improvement, not just one of the many tools. But the other way to measure how lean is affected the organization is look at your metrics. If you're not doing continuous improvement, your metrics not moving the needle. So I will go look at a more holistic approach to it than just using tools. Look at your lean system as an overall.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah. There's a lot in the playbook, right? It doesn't just have to be major Kaizen event all the time.
Amen. I do want to make a comment.
Yeah.
Back to quality over quantity. What is the organization equipped to do? If you're, again, I'm all about sustaining that culture and sustaining it through big wins and little wins. And if you're trying to tackle too much in the organization through continuous improvement, the continuous improvement lens, it will start to dilute. So that's where that quota word gets a little challenging for organizations to balance between, are we doing enough or are we doing too much? And you'll be able to pulse that in the organization as you walk around and ask people about their perception of Kaizen and continuous improvement.
Again, it kind of goes back, like you're talking, like actually having communication, understanding the pulse of the business, the culture, right? All that stuff. It all dances together. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about commitment and buy-in, right? Some good buzzwords, right? Getting everybody to buy in. So it can often diminish during the space between you finalize the Kaizen plan and then you're going to have the kickoff, right? But it doesn't always work where we signed off on the plan and then now we're going to do the kickoff, right? Sometimes there's a space between there.
Sure.
How do you navigate the sort of the natural human tendency for people to sometimes lose a little bit of that buy-in and commitment in that space? And so Tyler, I'd like to start with you on that one.
I call it Kaizen marketing.
Ooh.
It's not trademarked, so have at it.
I'm going to write it down then.
Anytime there's going to be a lull in the activity, the organization gets excited, you bring on a new Kaizen leader, you start a new project, you have new goals. There's a lot of energy there. There's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of conversation in the halls and around the water coolers. And then, oh wait, we get everything done and the team isn't available for 4 weeks. That's how it is. That's totally fine. But it is up to, I would say, the Kaizen leader and a select few to ensure that momentum still continues until the event itself starts. Now, how do you do that? You talk about it. You have touch base meetings, whether they're 5 or 7 minute touch base meetings, to see if there's been any additional data that's come into the mix since the event has been planned. You introduce it to a few people on the floor. You just go out and you sell it and market it to the organization so that the conversation and the communication continues beyond just the planning event up until the point where it starts.
I like it. What would you add to that, Lucy?
First of all, Kaizen marketing. really important, but I'll be honest, I'm terrible about it. So I get into let's get ready, and I forgot about sharing and communicating with the organization. But I completely agree with Tyler. I mean, you have to keep it in front of people. Um, Having those quick touch points where you go back to your charter and all those data preparation points, you make sure it's there because that's where you can flag it. Hey, we don't have this, it's not ready to go. Um, but the other thing, like I mentioned in my presentation, is a week or before the Kaizen event, go to the area where you're going to do it. And if this is the first time you introduce the Kaizen, the activity is going to happen. Go ahead, do it. Put a flip chart, and keep that communication, and go back to the area a couple days or every couple days, and like, hey guys, have you added anything else into the flip chart? So it stays in front of them. But here's the one thing I will advise of not doing: like have the original kickoff, your charter, and then wait 2 months, 3 months to have the event. That is very risky. I understand. Usually it's 4 weeks by the time you get all the data and you get people's in the calendar. But more than that, business conditions might change, and maybe that Kaizen is not needed or priority change. And the longer you wait to address the issue, the more it can change on you. So try to keep that timeline as short as you can, enough to be fully prepared, or not drag it out for 3 months until even yourself kind of forgot about it by then.
You start losing your own buy-in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like sometimes, as you were talking about, it makes me think of like a lot of lean tools. This might sound a little, I don't know, different, but I look at them as like they're living and breathing things, and so we have to continue to give them oxygen, right? And so it's like, did I give the Kaizen plan? Did I give it oxygen today? Right? Oh no, I didn't. It needs it. Right?
Yeah.
So, excellent. All right, so. You both shared so much in your presentations, and then of course in our Q&A and everything. And I always like to end the Q&A with kind of that one big tip that you might give, right? Kind of if you can only have one thing. And so Lucy, we'll start with you. And my question is, what is the single most valuable piece of advice that you would give to someone who's about to facilitate their very first Kaizen?
Well, sorry, 2 pieces of advice, 2 tips. 1, double down on planning. Make sure everything is crossed off. Make sure you have everything you need. Because like I said, the better your preparation, the more the Kaizen just run itself. And you can almost go in auto mode. If it's your first time doing a Kaizen, you probably can't get into auto mode facilitator yet, but it will be easier on you. But the other one is always have a mentor. When I started it, I actually was a participant, kind of an observant in a few Kaizen events. And then I co-facilitated a few Kaizen events with a mentor. So I was not just thrown to the wolves and you fight your way through it. Have a few events where you co-facilitate, and then maybe the mentor stayed with you and is coaching you in the breaks. And then you can really feel the skills build up, and then you go to your first Kaizen event by yourself. But double down on planning. That's for me the key, is that make sure you have everything you need for it.
Beautiful, beautiful. How about you, Tyler?
In the planning part of it, establishing an agenda,
Yeah.
hands down. And then a couple other components that are part of the event itself is having a parking lot and a set of ground rules. And you can include that in the planning activity, but you can also include it in the activity of the Kaizen. So as you wrestle with leadership buy-in, you wrestle with scope creep, and you wrestle with, the safe space that everybody's in. These 2 things, and the agenda will set the tone, obviously, but having the parking lot and the, what was the other thing? Ground rules. It's something you can point back to and say, all right, folks, let's bring it back in. Look at the wall. This is what we all agreed on. This stems all the way back to the planning session. There's been a lot of thought put into this. Put it on the wall. Put it in the parking lot. Move on.
I love it. Yes. Having a mentor, right? The really thorough planning, and again having the things visual then in the actual Kaizen event as well. I love that in the agenda. Yeah, because you know the reality is, I mean, I see this as a coach. Is a lot of companies maybe there's not big enough, whatever it is, but they don't necessarily have someone that can, you know, where you can co-facilitate first and stuff. My very first Kaizen was literally my boss had to bail and I just had to run a Kaizen, right?
Wow.
And so like you know these things happen in the real world, and so I really love to like you know above anything else, you know, or I should say at the very least find a mentor, right? At the very least, if you're in on an island like that, find the mentor, and like you said, really put you know double down on that planning and making sure that everything is visual in the actual event. So thank you so much for, again for sharing your time and energy and experience well, with me, but actually you know for our Manufacturers Alliance community. So it was really really great. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Awesome. And if you like these real world examples and you would like to take a deeper dive into the tools and the concepts, then you've got to check out our Lean Practitioner series of digital courses. They're available at no extra cost to you because you are a member of Manufacturers Alliance. All you got to do, fill out the information at the bottom of the screen and it'll get you started. Thank you for spending your time with us today and for taking the time to invest in yourself. Y'all have a great day. All right, we're done. Woo! How'd that feel?